She's a licensed master of social work. She's licensed with her clinical and macro social work license and serves as an adjunct professor at Madison University. So let's all give Carlynn a round of applause. Thank you.
So this is going to be hard for me too, because I, like Mary Jo, can't stand still. Thank you. Hi, I'm Carlynn.
Hi.
Hi, Carlynn. My pronouns are her, she, and hers. Thank you. It is my distinct honor. I just feel so far away. I'm sorry. Whoever's next will have to move it. To be in this space with you today. You are getting an index card. So so I've learned a lot from social workers in my career, and I credit all of who I am, other than my mom and dad. You know, you gotta give a shout out to your parents, with social workers, and I'm gonna share a little bit about that with you. But I credit my ability to stand before you and do what I love to do, talk about social work, and in a way teach, with my friend and pal, Bill Vanderbilt.
Yeah, Bill.
And that's really important. So everybody's getting an index card. And on that index card, I just want you to write your current title. What is your current title? That's all I want you to write. And then I'm going to collect them. So like I said, it's a distinct honor and pleasure to be in this space with, I feel just like Dr. Sobek, with my people. You know, many of us get to go to many places and speak to many people and hang out with those who are like-minded, but it's nothing like being with social workers. It really isn't. So it's just an actual pleasure to be here today and to speak to you about macro social work. And when when Max asked me to do this, not very nicely, by the way, when Max voluntold me to do this, you know, I spent a lot of time thinking about what do I have to say to this awesome group of people that can make a difference. And for me, one of the things that makes this so important is just the fact that we're here today as macro practitioners in the same space having a conversation about something that's so very important to us, and I think is extremely important to me. So, are you guys done? See, when you've been practicing 25 years, you can tell the newbies to, hey, do this for me. So all I want you to do is write your current title. That's it. So this is a global definition of social work profession. Social work is a practice-based profession. So think of what you do. Social work is a practice-based profession and an academic discipline that promotes social change and development, social cohesion, and the empowerment and liberation of people. Principles of social justice, human rights, collective responsibility, and respect for diversities are central to social work. And dare I say, we heard that in the first two presentations, and as you read that, I bet you see yourself in the work that you do in that space. So what I think is really neat, things all happen in divine order. I think it's interesting how the first presenters, my friends here from Wayne State, they've kind of shared their social work journey with you. And that's what I'm going to have you do. So guess what? You need a sheet of paper and a pen. So I want you to create your own social work timeline. So it would be from like the moment you realize, ooh, I want to help people, but you didn't know really what that means. Ooh, I want to help people, to today. So a timeline. And I'm going to ask you a few questions. And you're on your timeline, you're going to think sequentially how this happened. So think back to the time you decided to go to college. When was that? And on your timeline, make a note of what you plan to major in right at that moment. When I decided I'm going to college. I decided I was going to be a teacher, which is just hilarious to me standing here right now.
Teaching?
So my next question is, think back to when you decided where you wanted to attend college for undergrad. Note why you chose that school. Why that school did you choose that school? So you're in undergrad, and then you decide, okay, so you put a stake in the ground. I am going to major in this. What was that? Not the first two majors, but the one you actually, when you actually decided, this is it, I got it. Now this may take you back in your timeline. Think back to the time you decided you wanted to make the difference in the lives of others. Make a note of what was your thinking at that time. So, when did you decide to get an MSW? Make a note of why. Why social work? So think back to when you figured out that social work was more than a job, it was a passion. When did that happen for you? And lastly, think to the time you decided to step into the world in which we call macro practice. What made you make that leap? Make a note of that. How did you make that leap? And just 2 questions for you to consider, because one of the charges Max gave me as your keynote was to figure out what's next for us. What has been the biggest influence in your career? Not the what. The other question is the who. What has made the biggest impact on you in your career? And then the other question is who. So I consider my social work journey, as I think about it, I'm appreciative of all of my experiences, and I bet my social work journey is not very different from those who are in my generation. Who's Gen Xers? I see y'all. I know y'all in my Gen Xers. Those in my generation. It's probably not too far, and as we heard from MJ, things are a little different now. However, I think what's important is that we, and where we sit right now in this space as macro practitioners, is that we allow for the opportunity for macro to grow, and we be the voice of macro. So my journey started long before I knew social work was a thing. Who has that? Like, I just wanted to make a difference. I wanted to help people, right? I didn't know what social work was. I didn't even know what social work was until after I got my undergraduate degree, actually. And I remember, like the moment, I remember as a child, believe it or not, sitting on the porch. Do folks still sit on porches? Not like they used to. Sitting on the porch with other kids, no doubt, right? Talking to them about their problems. Like, so they would, I'm pretty much an introvert, so I wasn't out at the parties like my sister, don't tell her I told you, but they would just come and sit and we would chat and I would talk to them about their problems. And, you know, I was like, this is kind of cool, right? I also remember as a high school student feeling alone. I'm feeling incompetent as a teenager and not having anybody to support me. I went to a private school and there was like 2 counselors, right? And there were 2 people that the counselors focused on, getting the valedictorian scholarships and off to college, and the bad kids that were taking up all their time. So if you were a pretty good kid, did your work, got good grades, didn't get any attention. So that also impacted me. Like, why is that? Why would nobody pay attention to my sorrow? I remember being at U of M. I decided to go to U of M. And I didn't have any real reason other than I wanted to go to what I consider to be the best school in the state. I mean, honestly, that's what, sorry, I know you went to Michigan State, it's okay. But, I mean, you gotta remember, I'm talking about my 17-year-old self, right? In my head, that's why I went. I didn't research anything. I was like, I wasn't going far from my mom and dad. You know, Ann Arbor seemed far back then from Detroit. It was a safe enough distance they would stay in Detroit and close enough I could get back to them if I needed to, right? Strategic, right? But I remember being there with an idea that I was going to study computer science and not really liking math that much. That's funny, right? But I did something that was like amazing to me. I took a sociology class and I took a psychology class, and I was like, wow, I could study this? And my dad was like, what is that? Like, how do you get a job with that? But I was gone. I, decided to study psychology. And U of M's psychology program at that time was very psychoanalytic. And I tried to take any course related to kids. Anything related to kids. That's how I started my journey. And so then I got out of college and I quickly realized that I didn't know anything because I got a job at Vista Maria. Whoever worked at Vista Maria? I know there's always a few in a room, right? It's a good training ground. And they gave me the lives of 2 young women. I was 22, they were 17 probably. I was like, their peers, right? And they said, counsel them. And I was like, what's that? And so that's when I realized, like my buddy Liz said, that the learning never stops. I started to learn as much as I can. And I really did feel like if I'm gonna do what I thought I was meant to do, is make a difference in the lives of other people, then I need to know a little more. So this time, master's degree, you gotta pay for that. Your mom and dad aren't gonna pay for that. I did research. I made a conscious decision to study social work. And not because I knew the complexity of what social work was, but because everyone said this is the best choice. If you really want to have some flexibility, if you want to expand your career, this is the way you go. And at that time, counseling was becoming a really popular degree. So I talked to counselors, psychologists, and social workers. And a trusted counselor I know at that time told me, don't get this degree. She did. I was like, okay. So I went to Wayne State. And what was interesting about my experience at Wayne State, I think particularly at that time, it's so fun how, it's great how curriculums are always evolving based on the needs of the community we serve. I think there was community organizing, children, youth, and families, and management. I think those were the choices. And I was like, I thought management, that would be great. But, you know, I still didn't know how to counsel people. So I asked that question. There were people, because, you know, Wayne State is a cool place because there are people straight out of undergrad in their program, but there are people who've been working for years in their program. And so I asked around, like, should I study management? And I was told, oh, don't worry about that. Just take the clinical route, you'll get there. So I studied children, youth, and families, which was great because I love children, youth, and families. Like I said, it was my passion. I knew that's where I was going to be. So fast forward, I graduate and I get a job as a clinical social worker at what was then Boysville, Michigan. Now it's Holy Cross Children's Services. And there are a few things that shaped my experience and my really understanding who I am as a social worker. One is my field placement. My first field placement, I was like, you want me to do what? They wanted me to go out in the community. That's when I really started to understand social work. You want me to do what? And my field instructor, I still remember her. She was like, you are going in the community. And field instructors are great because they'll tell you like it is and they'll teach you and they dust you off and toss you back in the community and you learn so much. You really do. And my work at Boysville, as challenging as that very first job was, just because the culture, I didn't fit the culture, they were doing some really neat and innovative things, and I never had an office in that job. I was up and down the road, I was seeing families, I was all over the place. I was being taught this model at the time. You guys know it as MST. So I began to be a part of something special in my mind. So after being at Boysville, you know, for about a year and a half, I moved on to the community mental health system. It's kind of where I grew up. I'm leaving Boysville simply because the culture fit, it didn't work for me. So I went, and in my mind I was like, clinical social work, that's where I'm headed, right? So I wanted to be a clinician, and where else to be a clinician but be at a community mental health agency, so I did that. And I had a great pleasure working on an interdisciplinary team. Again, something that we learn in our work is critical to making a difference. 3 years after my master's degree, I became a macro practitioner. I became a supervisor, and I distinctly remember seeing Dean Vroom at an event. Who knows Dean Vroom? She's awesome. I had the pleasure of doing a research project with her when she was the associate dean at Wayne State, and that's where I got my whistle wet on evaluation. But she said to me, Carlynn, you're a supervisor? How long has it been since you graduated? And I told her, she said, that's about right. I was like, what? I thought I was doing something special. So I became a supervisor. Who remembers the time you became a manager of people and all the great training you got? I know, right? So it was great. great. I was like thrust into this world that we call macro social work, management of people, where I was asked to hire and interview and terminate and write policies and job descriptions. Who taught me this in grad school? Nobody. When you're a clinician, you're a clinician. You don't learn that stuff. Policy development. And my big aha moment was, man, I'm going to have to figure this out for myself. Because the pace of the work, as you know, is really fast. So I got that I had the basics down, and we all have the basics. Engagement, assessment, planning, evaluation, termination. Like, we got the plan change process. And we know, well, I didn't know that then, but I got it now. It doesn't matter where you sit me, I can use that. That's what makes us unique wherever I land. Macro, meso, micro. And I think that's the power of who we are as social workers. So I had to figure out, how do I manage this new world? I had to figure out how to make a distinction that social work is social work. Like, in my head, I try to help my new supervisors know that it's no different. Your client population just changed. They're called clinicians instead of kids and families. Social work is social work. So one of the things that I think that the thing that I want you to know is that we must find our voice to live the vision of what macro social work really is for us today. I think MJ and her colleagues' presentation, our colleagues here today that we all met, they are a perfect example of saying, I see that, that's my vision, and I'm going to be a social worker doing that thing. And I think we all can be in that space. We can't be shy. So I had to figure it out. How many of you had to figure it out? And I bet most of you are in my generation, or the generation before me, baby boomers, had to just figure it out. Did not have an MJ, just had to figure it out. So I was lucky, dare I say blessed, you pick the word, to have social workers along my social work journey who believed in me, who invited me to the table, that I didn't know why I was going to the table, but I was at the table and I wasn't going to turn it down, because who knows what's going to happen at the table, right? You meet people, you learn things. I have social workers who mentored me, who are those people that made the difference for you. Social workers who taught me. I learned at the feet of many people, and I know you guys do that too, because just today, you're being taught by one another. And social workers who saw in me what I did not see in myself. So there's so much that we do. These are just macro social work practice skills, right? Think of all that you do. And I love young lady in the yellow. What's your name?
Pat Green.
Pat Green. Stand up, Pat Green. Oh, I know Pat Green.
I'm in trouble.
When Joanne Sobek was asking questions about roles, she kept sitting down, standing up. Right? And that's what macro looks like, right? Doesn't it, Pat?
Yeah, it does.
Thank you. So how do we get these skills? How do we do that? Is a question I wonder. So I fast forward to the day, and I stand here with the great fortune to have started as a clinical social worker and moved to management because I was always surrounded by many passionate social workers willing to pour into me. That's the only reason I'm here. willing to pour into me, just like I'm sure you guys have someone pour into you. And I must say this has not stopped, which is why this day is so important. I continue to learn and grow, much like Liz already said. She has taught me, and I continue to learn from Liz. I continue to learn and grow as I engage in my work with my social work colleagues and friends, many who are in the room today. I talked to you about Bill. Bill is the one who, he's like the social worker, right? He sees the good in all things and will lift you up and make you feel like you are on top of the world and make you feel like you can do anything. My first supervisor, when I became a supervisor, I was lucky to be a part of this huge SAMHSA grant, right? It's like a 7, who said, oh God? It was, I know, but it was like, it was a big deal. It was like.
Versus trying to get it on grants.gov.
Yeah, well, they didn't have grants.gov then. How about that? Who knows how they got the reports? I was the supervisor. But this 7-year, $13 million grant, unheard of. It was a systems transformation grant, and anybody who knows me well enough to know I love systems transformation, because it was like a space I walked into, and it was like, whoa, right? And Bob OBrien afforded me that opportunity, and watching him, he's a social worker, watching him taught me how to build coalitions. It taught me how to organize communities. It taught me how to create and share a vision. I learned that from Bob. Roberta Walker, who is a friend and colleague, was also a boss and now a friend. She's the one that pushed me towards this idea of, you just can't manage people, Carlynn. You got to be a leader. She started me thinking about coaching and teaching and mentoring. She did that for me. She gave me a book. Read this, right? Joan Abbey, if anybody knows Joan, she was the very first person that taught me how to appreciate evaluation. Before, I was like, I tried to avoid the research class in grad school, right? You know, I avoided that. I did the project with Dean Room, which was great. But it was still evaluation. But in my mind, it was like collaboration. And, you know, it's kind of like Dr. Sobek said, it looks different ways depending on where you sit. And so Joan Abbey made me appreciate evaluation and the power of data. Carrie Banks Patterson, another one of my, she's a mentor and she continues to provide me with support, led me from being a change agent in a small community-based organization in Southwest Detroit to being a change agent for the entire county of Wayne for children, youth, and families, which was huge. Love that job. If you want to be a change agent, work for the county. If you don't like bureaucracy, only stay 5 years, believe me. It was good stuff, though. How about being able to build coalitions and write policy, and that's where I met Dr. Sobek for the first time. She saw what we were doing with system of care work. She was like, come talk to our class. And so it was great to make that connection. And so Dr. Sobek is on my list as one of the people who made me appreciate the power of university partnerships. The real work that can happen when community meets university, and the give and take of it all. We're doing a great project with Wayne State that's going to change practice, which will change how we serve children and families, which will probably change how Wayne State teaches students, right? That's social work. And then I have some of my new social work people. Abby Adair. Is Abby still here? Abby, stand up, Abby. I love Abby. So here's one of the beauties. If you like to teach and you haven't been a field instructor, give it a try. You learn so much from students. They are amazing. Abby has been one of my teachers. She was my student, and now she works in philanthropy at the Children's Center. She is making a difference in a space that social workers would not even consider. And now she's gonna bring in a student. Social workers and philanthropy. It's amazing. And she's creative and she's gifted, and she's been one of my teachers, her and her boss, Beth Marks, who's also a social worker, to help me understand the intersection between program development and philanthropy. Another one of my pals, Mary Madison, she isn't here. She's the one that began to lead me down this path of social impact. You know, she says she learns a lot from me, I learn a lot from her. And then we have people like Maxine Thom, who I was on a committee with before. I was on a committee with Max before she was even the ED. She was just this quiet little lady. We would fold pamphlets together. But we were social workers hanging out, right? It was always good stuff, planning a conference, we go every year. And she continues to provide leadership for this organization that I think is really important, and she nudged me to be in front of you here today. So my journey is no different than yours. My journey has its twists and turns, and this is where we land. These are careers in social work. We can make this list longer. Can I bother you to, I'm bothering them, right? To pick up those cards, please? Thank you. One of the things, and I appreciate Max's honesty, because one of the things that I began to struggle with, so I started to realize that my journey from practitioner to I'm like a CCO. What does that mean, right? I'm like a chief of something, right? That is not a journey that a clinician at my organization can make that leap like I did. People want to come and talk to me. Tell me how you did that. And I just told you how I did it, but I also worked in a world that was grant-based. I also worked in a world where somebody was willing to say, you don't have to see clients today, we're gonna take you to this community organization. So I had a lot more flexibility, and all those people I mentioned and more are the people that I learned from. So how does a clinician just graduated who has the constraints of having to live in a fee-for-service environment where the only way they can actually, their job is really face-to-face client interaction, how do they get that support? We know, in general, they probably can't afford to come to this event. How do they get what they need? And I think we need to figure out how we make that happen. So I have a reunification coordinator, provider network program services director, retired social workers. Social workers don't retire. They don't. They join boards, they consult. Their family members call them asking for help. Social work manager, program manager, adjunct faculty, business owner, grant writer, employer, donor relations manager. That's Abby. She has really nice handwriting too. Clinical supervisor, director of constituent services, author. How about that? Author/social worker. I love that. Communications and outreach coordinator, youth prevention, research associate, macro clinical work clinical practice, office manager, project manager, geographic information system specialist. I know, right? Social workers. Faculty member at MSU. Go green, go white. Whoop, whoop. Academic services officer, vocational rehab supports coordinator, campaigns and advocacy coordinator. So I'm going to give, guess what? I'm going to give all these to Max. Because one of my goals has been to ensure that, and this is why this is so important. One of my goals is to ensure that all of the field understands what macro practice is. So, like I said, my social work journey just afforded me an opportunity to, along my path, have opportunities, experiences, and people that have me standing here today. And these opportunities, now they have to be sought after. It's not like somebody said, I mean, literally, somebody came up to me from Madonna, if anybody knows, Dr. Charbonneau said, hey, would you like to teach? I was like, yeah, how'd you know this I wanted to do since 7th grade, right? So that kind of thing, somebody seeing something in you. And I know that in order to get, for other folks to get that experience, it has to be created. We can't just sit and hope. It has to be created in order to grow, and we have to be prepared for these opportunities. For this reason, I'm troubled that we don't have the support required to grow, and the perception and opportunities for macro social work does not lend itself to us to have those opportunities. That troubles me. I'm troubled when an MSW student, and right now I only take macro students because that's the world I live in and that's where I feel like I can contribute the most, ask me, should I focus on IP because I was told I couldn't get a job as a macro social worker? You know, you hear that. That troubles me. I'm troubled when I have to, and I heard Dominique, I overheard this. I have that experience. What keywords do you have to use to figure out the right job that, you know, because it doesn't say social work. What are the keywords? Why isn't it not that I can hand in my resume somewhere for this job as a social worker, and they're like, oh, you're a social worker. I know you have all the skills needed for that particular position. I'm troubled that the perception about social workers has broadened, resulting in opportunities. That's not what I'm trying to say. Hasn't broadened. That's what I'm saying. Resulting in opportunities not readily available. So, Dominique, you're looking for a job. Is that what you're doing?
Hey, you know, I'm figuring it out.
Right. She's trying to figure out the key words.
Yeah.
Everybody in here knows just how amazing she is. Right. She should have a job right now, right? Yes. And everybody here knows all the things she could probably do and contribute. Why is that so hard? Why are these opportunities not readily available? I don't think it has to be this way. I think we're the answer. I think we must pay attention to the needs of the profession. I have macro practitioners who are going other places to try to get CEs because they can't get them within the spectrum of where they work, or they can't get them from NASW, Michigan. They couldn't in the past. We're getting 6 today, people. And there's a future. There's a future, right?
And I have witnesses.
You have many witnesses. And So our social work practice is far beyond clinical practice. I met with somebody recently, I think it was MJ, we were talking, and she said studies show that 80% of people going into social work school want to be private practitioners.
85%.
I'm sorry.
Longitudinal study in California that can be generalized because they've got all the students, so it's demographically and
Yeah, 85%
desire
to be a private practitioner. Not a practitioner in the mean streets of the urban or rural or suburban, you know, not what we know social work to be. And I see it all the time. The turnaround, yes ma'am.
Oh, I'm sorry, I just didn't want to interrupt you. But what I'm thinking is, and actually what I mentioned when I went to get some coffee, is that I think social workers don't know how to monetize their skills. You know, how do you put a price on, how do you identify the skill, and then how do you charge for that? I mean, if we're interpersonal practice, then Medicaid tells us, but we don't know how to do that.
And what I heard Mary Jo say is that we have examples in the business world that we need to take from. That there are certain things, there are places in the business world where we'll do just fine, that they can't do well. Yes, ma'am.
I was gonna say, I've been in private practice for full-time for 11 years now. And so, in the midst of doing private practice, I stumbled upon people who had this service called chore services, and I really wasn't sure what that was. Yeah. But my clientele kept complaining about people, you know, stealing from them and doing things like that. And so I thought to myself, well, I think I could I know a few people who could do that service, but still I trusted them. So I ventured off into doing chore services, and it ended up that part of my private practice ended up growing faster and quicker and larger than the clinical part. So like I have like 36 employees, and most of them are chore workers. And I put their business. So I found a way, just kind of stumbled into it. But once I found out, I just took it and just ran.
Well, many of us stumble into greatness, right? We do. So we're more than just clinical practice. Social work is so far beyond clinical practice, and there's so much that we have to offer, and I think we're expanding that every day. Dare I say, listening to our colleagues today broaden our own personal thinking about what we've done, and this must be solidified. So I do have a very real question for you, that on behalf of Maxine Bauman, I believe it's one of the questions on this document. Maybe not. Let's ask it anyway. What must we do for the profession and to support macro social work and to support each other? What should that look like? Make sure you add that. I think that's a very real question that we need to consider. What is it that you, as a macro practitioner, want to see? How do we leave this space better for being in it? Thank you.
Can we get at least the 2 slides with all the list of everything?
Absolutely. Algeria has it. She can give you whatever you need.